Okay, Sven, let's you can tell me to stop right off the bat because Weather Terrorism 101, I've grabbed the map with the most snowfall I can possibly find for Saturday's snowstorm. Tell me why it's
Yeah.
wrong. Tell me why that foot of snow over the metro is stupid, or tell me why it's going to
Yeah.
happen.
And that's usually what you send me is the most extreme
Yes.
thing you can find. But in this case, it may not be crazy. As you know, European model is one of the most accurate of the models. So when it consistently produces something, it's definitely something worth paying attention to. And as you know too, the last couple of days, it has been the consistent big snow producer and just optimal track right over Twin Cities, St. Cloud to Alexandria, and also one of the critical things that we always talk about is what is the snow to water ratio. And I don't think it's off on the ratios. It's something I've been looking at all week too. We're going to be in that sweet spot of the dendritic growth zone. So you want the saturation and the biggest forcing or upward lift in a system to be in this zone of temperatures that's basically single digit temperatures anywhere aloft. And Saturday system looks like not only do we have more moisture with the Saturday system than the one coming in later today, but it's also going to be producing the biggest lift right in that dendritic growth zone. And the dendrites are just your stereotypical snowflakes that we all, make cutouts of in school, and they add up really quickly. You get that fluffy, high accumulating snow. Whereas the snow we're going to see later today probably is going to be 10, maybe 12 to 1, or maybe even less than that, because most of the forcing in the atmosphere is going to be beneath that dendritic growth layer. Now, northeastern Minnesota will see more of that. So they'll have a higher ratio out of their snow, but you just get the best snowflakes without getting in too far into the weeds. You get the best snowflakes that accumulate the fastest in temperatures that are anywhere from 5 below 0 to 15 above. So single digit temperatures. It's a combination of pressure and temperature that just squeeze out that moisture and produce that optimal snowflake.
So we're looking at this weather bell map right now. It's the European model, and it's
hmm
it's legit showing a foot of snow in a 24-hour period from Friday night to Saturday night, and this is legit. This could happen.
Yeah, switch to the 10 to 1 ratio there just to
That's
show
eight
what we're working with.
inches over the metro, 7 or 8.
Wow. Well, no, but that includes tonight's too. So do the 24-hour
Oh, you're right.
10,
Yes,
24-hour 10 to
24
1
hour.
so that we're comparing. Yeah, so it's basically got a 20 to 1 ratio. So 6/10 of an inch of water times 20, it gets you up to a foot. So that's definitely it. That foot of snow might be on the higher end. We like to throw out ranges because it's going to be a range. Uh, Best guess right now for Saturday for the Twin Cities is probably 6 to 12 inches, which is a pretty wide range, but I do think that's going to be the range. Probably if you're from southeast to northwest suburbs, could be that 6 to 12 inch range. The American model is the one GFS, which has been on the lower end, but still a half foot. I think
But
we'll take
nobody
that,
nobody trusts the American model either,
and we
right?
shouldn't. It's one of the least accurate models. Quick explainer for all that is, we have a lot of different computer models, forecast models in the US that gets all of our attention and money and resources spread out. The European model, the European Meteorological Agency puts all their eggs into the European model. So that's why it's more accurate. We just have more choices to look at. But if you're looking at individual models, European model tends to be the most accurate. But as you know, as we get within this 48 to 60 hour time frame, then we get a whole another slew of uh, models that are higher resolution and update more frequently. So like the high resolution rapid refresh model or the HER, uh,
The H
once we
triple R,
yeah,
yeah.
once we get into range with that, we'll start to see what that shows. But the North American models too are showing a similar scenario. Now, the only little suspicious thing I've seen. Now we're looking at. You've got my window up right now, right?
Yep, yep,
You're
yep.
starting to see the snow fill in with this current system. We should talk about what's happening with that too, right?
Yeah, we can
Um,
talk about today,
why
Wednesday
not?
night snow. Yep.
We'll start there just quickly because that matters. And this is the blend of models, the national blend of models. This is essentially a weighted average of all the models together. And we get skunked again in the Twin Cities, probably under an inch. The weather surface is going up to an inch, inch and a half. I think that's too optimistic for the Twin Cities. I think it'll be a lot like what we had Sunday night, early Monday, another pathetic half inch or so. North Shore continues to get a ton of snow, another maybe 6, 7, 8 inches for Grand Marais. They got a lot out of the weekend system and the Sunday night system. So this current snow coming in later today into tonight is going to follow the trend that we've seen with all the others. But then, yeah, Saturday just continues to look really promising. This has been consistent all week long. And so when we add it all up, now this is going to be, oh, wait, I'm going to go to this. This is going to combine tonight's snow with what we see Saturday.
Ooh, baby.
And this is the average. This isn't an extreme. This is an average of the models. And you can see Twin Cities, we got to deduct that half inch we get tonight, but still 8 to 9 inches is a sizable snow. And for those keeping track at home, the only snowfall we have to beat is that December 19th, 5.5 inches. So this easily Saturday will be our biggest snowfall of the season so far. And, it's February. So how many other big storms do we have potentially down the road? This might be the biggest storm of winter.
Right.
Of course, March can do some crazy things, and so can April. But
so obviously in the map, the average there is showing that basically all of Minnesota can expect 2 to 10 inches of snow over the next 4 or 5 days, right?
Yeah, between tonight's system and Saturday.
Is that going to tighten up though? That like, is there going to be a more narrow band of where the heaviest totals fall on Saturday?
It will, but so this is because this is combining both tonight system and Saturday. You can see that the whole state gets blanketed by at least a few inches of snow. It will be. This is showing now. This is 12-hour snowfall from the model average, and you can see that it does line up across central Minnesota. And far northern Minnesota gets almost like not even a flake. So Crookston, Halleck, Roseau, International Falls will get very little out of this Saturday system.
But how likely is that storm track?
I would say right now that it's pretty likely. And one of the things, you and I talked about this. For people who don't know, you and I discuss this stuff every day.
Yeah, I text him like 1,000 times a day whenever it's going to be bad weather, and then when there's no weather, he doesn't hear from me.
Yeah, via text. But you're always hopeful, and I'm usually the one dashing your hopes.
Yes.
Just because as a good scientist, we're always skeptical. Now, so this is one. If I have to choose one little potential wrench in this that could change, this is the NAM model, North American model, is a little farther north with that track. So that's something I'm going to be watching for over the next 48 hours. Is the track stay consistent, or some of these higher resolution models that are just starting to catch on to this storm showing some other signs? I haven't looked at the latest HER yet, but so this would put that heaviest snow band that the European model is putting right over the Twin Cities, more over Alexandria, St. Cloud to Brainerd, and then putting it through the northern metro still, some of the heaviest snow. But if you look at if we put the European model on, you can see that is a little bit of a different track.
Yeah.
And
can we employ your
your
persistence forecasting theory? Can we employ that theory here, where you understand that everything in the past has gone north of the metro, even when the models 48 hours out are saying, hey, it's coming right through the metro, there's a sign that we could get 3, 4, 5 inches of snow, and then it all winds up St. Cloud and north. I mean,
and that is
that seems to be the trend,
and that is a legit thing that we are taught in forecasting when you're getting a meteorology degree, is persistence forecasting. It sounds kind of silly, but it if you're stuck in a pattern that is just pretty consistent, like for us in the Twin Cities, getting missed by storms that look promising, and then the track shifts north again, until that pattern breaks, you don't put all your weight into the persistence, but you got to keep that in mind. So people have a right to not get really excited yet or be pessimistic, because this winter has not panned out for us so far. But is this the storm that finally breaks the mold and shifts? We've talked, I wrote an article and we've talked about how February in the models has looked different. Like there is a shift towards a more wintry pattern, colder temperatures, and more snow. And so far, just looking at this week as a sample, temperatures have been below normal overall, and it's been more active. At least we haven't seen a ton of snow yet in the Twin Cities, but the pattern is definitely more active with systems in our region one after the other, which is something we didn't see really in January. So I think that looks hopeful. But yeah, until we see it, it's hard to believe it, even when the models are all showing some consistency. One thing I did want to show though is what I talked about with you yesterday or the day before is until the Ensemble started to pick up on this.
And what are the ensembles?
And the ensembles are here, let's put on all of them so that it makes more sense. Panels,
the panels.
winter, yeah. So we'll do, is this all of them?
And this is the European model you're pulling up. The European ensemble.
Yeah, so what the ensembles are is taking the model, like we were just showing you the European model. You started with showing me the deterministic European model, and that just means that's what that particular model run with that particular data shows this. And each model run is going to be slightly different. But what the ensembles do is we take the same model and we call them perturbations, where you treat the data differently and get different outcomes. So this is the European model for total snow through early Sunday. So that would include tonight's system and Saturday's system. And you can see how many are there here? 5 times 5, 25 different scenarios of the same European model, but playing out differently. So you can see some show less snow, some show more. And then we average those. So in theory, what the ensembles do is show you, okay, the model thinks there's this variety of scenarios that could happen. What's the average of those? Rather than taking the deterministic, which is just that one particular model run with just one set of data, what does it look like if we kind of zoom out and essentially tweak or fudge the data? And so that's something that I've been waiting to see these agree more with the deterministic models. Now, this only is using a 10-to-1 ratio, which it's not going to be. We've already determined
closer to 20 to 1.
Be,
right.
It's going to be at least a 15-to-1, if not, 20-to-1 ratio. So this is ideal kind of snowfall accumulation. So essentially, this is 44 hundredths of an inch of water, which would give us 9 inches of snow almost. So the European ensemble is getting close to what the European deterministic model has been showing. There's still a little bit of a gap of 3 inches, but the fact that they are now starting to line up more is really promising. And this gives us, as forecasters, more confidence that this scenario is going to play out. And so here's the American model ensemble, which is showing more than the American deterministic. So this is more like 7 inches of snow.
And it's got that same track kind of right through
same
the metro.
track. And the Canadian model is actually maybe a little farther south, but either way, each of these three paints the heaviest snow over the Twin Cities or somewhere in the southern half of the state. And so that's what's really important to look at. So again, there's the Canadian ensemble, European ensemble, the American ensemble. And then when we look at the actual deterministic models, there's the European, the American, the Canadian. And again, these are just 10-to-1 ratios. So what gives us more and more confidence that this is going to pan out is that all of these, all 6, the 3 deterministic and the 3 ensembles, pretty much are in agreement. They vary a little bit on the amount of water in the storm, but again, whether it's 6 inches or 12 inches, this is going to be our most significant snowfall we've seen so far, as long as we get over 5.5 inches. So things are looking really good. But yeah, until we get there, things could change a little bit. So
I was reading
persistence part of it.
I was reading the Twin Cities Office of the National Weather Service forecast discussion. They said there are some failure scenarios, which would be a snow bust. I don't know if they're just I think they just talk about their local coverage area, so it may not mean the same thing for Duluth or further north, places like Bemidji and whatnot. But what is the failure scenario here where this thing could all go bust?
Yeah, so I know what you're talking about. In their discussion this morning, they were talking about all these things need to phase together. So there's parts of a developing storm system that all have to come together, but they even know that's the same for every storm. So it's possible that the phasing, meaning where's the best forcing, the best temperature gradient, the best lift, the best dendritic growth layer zone, all those things have to come together in one spot. If they don't, this is showing vorticity, which is essentially we're looking at spin aloft, so 10, 20,000 feet up And where you have cyclonic spin or vorticity, that denotes that there's upward lift in the atmosphere. And again, this is the European model. So what we're looking at is, I'm going to work backwards. So here's Saturday. You can see that wave over Minnesota, that red blotch. That's the wave that's going to produce the snow. That needs to line up with where the best temperature gradient is. So if we put on surface temperatures, or I'm going to put on temperatures slightly aloft, actually. We've got the tightest temperature gradient just south of us, which is what you want.
And the gradient is all the tightly colored,
yeah,
where the colors packed together. Yeah.
Where the colors are bunched together the most, that's the tightest temperature gradient. So just south of us, so like southern Iowa, and as far as if we put on like temperature anomalies, that kind of can highlight it better. You want things to be, you want to be between the blue and the red as much as possible, because what happens here, put on some winds. So this is Saturday morning. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Winds at about 4,000 feet up. You can see here coming from the Gulf of Mexico, southwest winds, and then through Arkansas, southwest winds, Missouri, southwest winds, and then they turn to Iowa, southeast winds pushing into southern Minnesota. So in severe weather, when we're talking about thunderstorms, we're always looking for the nose of the low-level jet. Well, the low-level jet stream plays into our snowstorms too. And so this is essentially the conveyor belt of warm, moist air from the Gulf of Mexico. And this has been what's been lacking with most of our systems this winter, is we haven't been able to tap into that because we're either too cold or we're too warm, and not in that sweet spot, that Goldilocks zone of the tightest temperature gradient, which here you can see, again, southern Iowa. And then I'll switch back to the winds. At that same level, you want those south winds blowing across that tighter temperature gradient, and then that produces the greatest lift. Now I'm going to just grab one other thing here quick to show, kind of getting a meteorology lesson here.
No, this is awesome. And people, if you're watching this, and I mean, let us know if you like these. These are kind of fun, because usually Sven's putting together some highly produced, 3 or 4 minute weather packages, but we thought it'd be fun to sit down and just kind of talk about like what goes into everything, because
Yeah, this is
it can get pretty confusing.
This is a situation where it makes more sense to do that.
Right.
So that same time frame, now this is a different model, but in theory, the European model should agree with the North American model to some extent. Yeah. So that same period, I was showing you the temperatures and winds at about 4,000 feet up from the European model. You got a nice south wind coming from the Gulf of Mexico blowing across that tightest temperature gradient. So warmer air moving into our colder air mass. And then this is showing vertical velocity at about 15,000 feet. So where is air moving upward at that level and right over us? So this yellow area here is where we have the best lift, because that's where you have the best lift there, because that's the maximum of where the tightest temperature gradient, strongest winds coming out of the south here. And then if we look at the temperature at that level, there you go. So the best vertical velocity, upward motion over central southern Minnesota, because the tightest temperature gradient to the south winds moving across that, and the temperature there, 13 degrees below 0 Celsius, that is in that dendritic growth zone of single digits Fahrenheit, or between 10 and 20 below 0 Celsius. So that's why this is all panning out to be a big snow producer.
Yeah.
Everything coming
so
together.
Basically, boom shakalaka, you're guaranteeing a foot of snow.
Yeah. And so what the Weather Service is talking about, what the Weather Service is talking about is if one of those elements doesn't line up for whatever reason, the timing can shift, something gets delayed moving over the mountains or whatever, then that can dramatically affect things. If we have the moisture in the lift, but all of a sudden that the best temperature spot for dendritic growth zone is somewhere else, farther north, let's say, and our ratio is 10-1, well, we're still looking at 4 or 5 inches of snow. But that's something that it could affect maybe the final snowfall totals, is if, let's say, the vertical velocity and the dendritic growth zone don't line up perfectly. But right now, almost all the models all agree on lining all those things together over us. But yeah, I mean, that's all the science. But the human part of us wants to knock on wood and be like, okay, well, I'll believe it when I see it.
Yeah, that's kind of where we're at. So I won't be shocked if this thing slides north like 50 miles and the Twin Cities gets 4 inches and St. Cloud and Brainerd get absolutely
Yeah,
smashed.
yeah.
That seems to be the Twin Cities is
And
always on
people
the
will
edge. That's just
what
built in.
what's funny is people will consider that a bust if we only get 4 inches, even though it would be our second biggest storm of the entire
Yeah,
winter.
exactly. Well, I mean,
It's
it's
all about
pathetic. We've had
it's
two Januaries
perceptions.
and 2 Januaries in a row of less than 2 inches in the Twin Cities is absurd. So
Yep. It's
welcome
like
to
I
the
know
modern world.
you're a big football guy. It's like it's
Yeah.
all about perceptions. And so, like, to me, the Vikings sucked because they lost the game that mattered, even though they had a pretty good season. It was a better season than anybody expected, but
Yeah. Yeah.
the
We got a
expectation was you better keep it up. So
Yeah, but this weather, the last two winters, this winter so far and last winter are like a 3-14 NFL season. You can zoom out and everything still sucks, right?
yeah,
Like it's one thing to look at a snowstorm and that one busted, but the ones before it were fantastic, and you go 14-3, and Kevin O'Connell's the coach of the year, and everything's great. Justin Jefferson's amazing, and here we we just blow it in
yeah.
playoffs.
Well, and
So
I'm writing an article about this winter so far. The last winter wasn't such a disappointment. It was the record warmest winter. It was disappointing if you wanted winter, but it was kind of expected that it was going to be a crap winter because of a strong El Nino
yeah, the
plus
Super El
climate
Nino,
change.
right?
What's
Yeah,
disappointing about this winter is all things should have lined up for a fairly normal winter, and it's not been. Temperatures have been closer to normal, but even those have been above normal overall. And obviously, on the snow front, we've sucked. But even northeastern Minnesota, places like Grand Marais that have been getting all the snow, they're below normal too for winter season to date snowfall. So
I mean
it's
it's
all relative,
February.
but everybody's
What is
suffering.
It's February 5th, and I think New Orleans and Pensacola have had equal amounts of snow as the Twin Cities, which is,
Yeah, not
I
far
mean, that's
behind. We've
one
had
big storm, but
yeah,
still, it's crazy.
we've had 10 and New Orleans has had 8.
Yeah,
They
that's
should never be that close at February 5th.
no. All right, man. Hey, thanks for doing this. Let's do this again when the weather warrants.
Well, we still have a couple days before that big storm too, so
Do it again. Why not?
all right.
All right, let us know what you think in the comments, and please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We'd really appreciate that. It really helps us drive the revenue so we can stay afloat in this crazy world of media. So
None of
thanks,
this is
guys.
free.
Yeah, damn right. All right, thanks, man. Talk to you later.
You bet.